welcome to one and all for today's evening. Myself, Ansari Sama, I will be the MC for today's event. So I would like to call Kaviraj Nair. He is a Chief Executive Officer at Office of Institutional Advancement, IIT Madras, to come forward and share about the introduction of the speaker and welcome the gathering.
Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to this evening's session on the Fireside chat with Mr. Kris Gopalakrishnan. Of course, Kris does not need any kind of introduction and very familiar to all of us, but for the sake of completing the formalities, I will introduce him. Mr. Kris Gopalakrishnan is a global business and technology thought leader who has played an invaluable role in growing the IT services industry, both in India and globally. Mr. Kris was a co-founder of Infosys and also served as a CEO and MD of Infosys from 2007 to 2011. Later, he also served as a vice chairman of Infosys from 2011 to 2014. Post-retirement, Kris started investing in the Indian startup ecosystem and philanthropically supported research on brain sciences, aging-related disorders, and healthcare in India. He is the chairman of the board of governors of IIT Bangalore. With a master's degree in physics and computer science from our IIT Madras, Kris was voted the top CEO in IT services category in Institutional Investors' inaugural ranking of Asia's top executives and selected as one of the winners of the second Asian Corporate Director Recognition Awards by Corporate Governance Asia in 2011. He supports young researchers in India through the Pratiksha Trust Young Investigators Award at IISc, Pratiksha Trust Scholarship and Travel Grants for Winter Schools on Quantitative Systems Biology at ICTS, and the Young Faculty Recognition Award and Travel Grants at IIT Madras. Of course, he's also invested in the Brain Research Center at IIT Madras, the Sudha Gopalakrishnan Center that we have, led by Professor Mohan Shankar. In January 2011, Kris was awarded the Padma Bhushan. A distinguished alumnus awardee of IIT Madras in 1998, Kris is one of our most cherished, celebrated, and committed patrons, committed to the growth and development of his beloved alma mater. He has enabled several path-breaking initiatives in IIT Madras. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Kris to this evening session. Professor Mahesh will be talking to Kris in this, what promises to be a very interesting session. Welcome to both of you.
You'll have to come that way.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I'm delighted to be hosting this chat with one of our very distinguished alumni, Kris Gopalakrishnan, and an architect of an iconic company in India, Infosys, as we all know. Going beyond his time at Infosys, since his Infosys tenure, he has directed his time and effort to create other more sustainable efforts, both in the investment space as well as through his philanthropic activities. So he is truly a multidimensional individual. And we are today going to chat about his recent book, Against All Odds, the IT Story of India, which he has co-authored with Krishnan Narayanan, another fellow alumnus of IIT Madras, and Daya Sindhu. Daya Sindhu is also an alumnus, that's right, I forgot about that. So Krishnan is the current president of the IITM Alumni Association, and this is a wonderful book. I strongly recommend everybody should get a copy. For one simple reason, if India is on the global map today and is known globally, it is for two reasons, IIT and IT. You all have one of the two well under your belt. You should learn why it is on the map globally for the IT part. So let's start, Kris, with, you talk of, the book says Against All Odds. So we will hear about the odds that the industry went through from your insider perspective, and it's a very valuable perspective for all of us, because many of us may not have been born when the IT industry was going through the odds or encountering the odds. So it would be, and in fact, the early part of your book refers to times when I was not born. Okay, so let's start with that. In 1959, India was home to the world's best computer. The world's best supercomputer was right here in India. I want you to talk about that computer and the people, and particularly the man that made it happen.
So first of all, thank you very much. It's a great opportunity, and especially at IIT Madras, because of course I'm an alumnus of IIT Madras. The reason we wrote this book and the genesis of this is, as soon as I stepped down from Infosys at 2014, I felt that there has to be some way I can give back to the industry. I also wanted to make sure that the voices of people who made it happen, I'm very proud of what the industry has done. So the voices of people who made it happen is not lost. You know that FC Kohli is no more,
yes,
right? We had the opportunity to interview and capture 1 hour of his perspective, in his own words. Now, after we captured all this, about 56 people we captured, we said, is that okay enough? But then a lot of people said, can you add your perspective? Can you add the references and maybe write a book? And that's
it's truly a book. It's a researched book. I could see in every statement.
Yeah, it took almost 2 years. So, and we learned a lot of things. I, being in the industry for 40 plus years, did not know what you now just talked about.
Yeah.
Right? Homi Bhabha, who is actually a initiator of a lot of the things that happened early on in India, atomic research and establishment of TIFR, went to Cambridge. And he saw the blossoming of the computer industry. So 1945 was when the digital computer was introduced. So this is in 50s, right? Within 10 years of that time, he had visited Cambridge University, and then he came back and wrote a report to TIFR. He used to be there, saying that we must actually invest in computer science, invest in computing, and we must build a computer at that point. And so they did assemble what they called TIFRAC, TIFR Advanced Computer, or Advanced Calculator, I think they called it, TIFRAC. And at that point, in 1962 was when they commissioned it. It was faster than the equivalent IBM computer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they didn't pursue it. Otherwise, we would have been actually equally well known in the hardware side as we are known in the software side. But it is important to know these stories, right? It is important for us to understand the foresight many people had. We will later probably come back to the foresight IITs had in establishing. So it is important. The first computer came in ISI Calcutta. And the way they justified that computer was, this is Professor Mahabinobis, was that he told Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru that we need a computer for 5-year planning. Right? And that's how he got the computer at that point. So, they had that foresight that somehow or other we need to get access to computers and things like that. And
actually, you talk about how Professor Mahalanobis used a computer to track agriculture production across the country in 1955.
Yes, and that's it. See, they realized that this is a machine that can do many things, right? And that vision was there, and there are lots and lot of stories about, I think, later on we'll come to this about Professor Mahabala and Narayan Murthy.
Yeah.
Right? Narayan Murthy took a class to this Indian Administrative Service or public sector officers, and somebody had written a program and there was no instruction to print the result. Okay, and Professor Mahabala in the class had said, computers can do matchmaking and things like that. And so the person asked the question, is the computer stupid that it doesn't know that it has to print the answer?
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of funny incidents such as these are there, anecdotes. And we were able to capture these anecdotes because we interviewed the people who were involved.
Yeah.
Otherwise it would have been lost.
So, by the way, you should all know, the book is written as part of a company that Kris supports called Itihasa Digital, which is in the quote-unquote business of storing companies' history and heritage. So, if all of you, any of you here want to start up, you should start the history logging process right away, because when you become very big, this data will become important for even for something as simple as branding. So let's talk a little bit about the contribution. You talk extensively about the role of the education ecosystem in India and how computer science as a discipline started in Kanpur with the MTech program and how people sort of gravitated to it.
So this is way back in 1965. Professor Mahabala, Professor Rajaraman, after studying abroad, etc., came back. Of course, they were not from the computer science background, but they wanted to start a computer science program, and so they were requested to head, to start the program. So they got trained by people outside way back in 65, and 65 is when IIT Kanpur started their MTech computer science program. It was a mix of hardware and software. More of hardware probably at that time rather than less of software. Later on, these people went to different parts of the country and started computer science programs in other places. So Professor Mahabala came to IIT Madras.
Correct.
Professor Rajaraman went to Indian Institute of Science. Then somebody went to IIT Bombay, I forget the name now.
Professor Muthukrishnan came to IIT Madras.
Professor Muthukrishnan came to IIT Madras. So a lot of these people came to different IITs and started the program on computer science. IIT Madras was again different because IIT Madras was the one which is focused on software. So this MTech program was primarily focused on software, whereas others were mixed hardware and software. And another story I will tell you about Professor Mahabala. He is also no more, but we again documented his story. Professor Mahabala, after coming here to IIT Madras, wanted to buy a computer for IIT Madras. And look at the audaciousness of people, right? He said, I want to buy the biggest computer. And he convinced the German government, which funded that, to buy the second largest computer in Asia at that point. In Asia. And people asked, we're talking about not even knowing how to use a computer, and you want to buy the largest computer money can buy.
Yeah.
And he knew that, and it was completely used within no time. There was no time available on that computer because they restricted people from accessing that computer. Only students in the computer science department or industry that could use. So a lot of industry people got access to computers to use the computer. So lots of.
In fact, if you all go by the PG Senapati Center for Computing Resources, Kris has supported that. And the IBM 370 used to be housed in that building, which was Asia's largest computer, which was installed in 1973 at that time. And also, Kris, you talked about IIT Kanpur and its story of buying an IBM 1607, if I'm not mistaken, about how it got there in the first place. And, sort of that talks to the infrastructure against all odds that we were working.
Again, you should know these anecdotes. Of course, somebody in the computer science field should know these anecdotes. What all we had to, or maybe interesting stories, you can say. So the computer came all the way from, I don't know where from Asia it came. It came to Kanpur by flight. Then they were afraid to take it in a truck, on a truck, because they thought the vibration on the road will disturb the, the parts in the computer, so it will probably not work once it reaches Kanpur, IIT Kanpur. So they decided to take it on a bullock cart with rubber tires, so that they can withstand. They slowly took it to IIT Kanpur on a bullock cart. So this computer worth lots of money, taken on a bullock cart on our roads, etc. And when it reached IIT Kanpur, they figured out that the door that they had made was not large enough. So they had to break the wall to take the computer inside.
And once it got commissioned, guess what the single biggest use of that machine was from students of IIT Kanpur? Anybody wants to take a guess? This is what there's a game called Space War. Not very different from when you buy your first computer today.
Yeah. So, things don't change much, right?
So, and you talked of IIT Kanpur, which by all definitions is the fountainhead of computer education in India, largely. And then where you said it was hardware focused in IIT Madras. You were a student of both physics and then computer science. Please talk a little bit about your introduction to computing and computers.
So again, I have to come back to Professor Mahabala. This is not in the book because I don't think it's mentioned in the book.
Okay.
I was going from the library to the hostel on a cycle with 2 books on the carrier, cycle carrier. And somebody behind me stopped me, said, stop, what books are these? And I said, I'm trying to read up something on computers because, I heard that we have a computer and I wanted to understand more about it because I was studying physics at that point. So he recommended that I go to a free Fortran course that's being offered in the campus. And you will get access to the computer department if you take that course. So I did that, and then later on I joined MTech Computer Science. But the person who stopped me was Professor Mahabala. Right? At that point, he was head of Department of Computer Science here. So I tell, when I go to campuses, I tell if some professor stops you on the corridor or something, please listen to him or her, because that can change your life. It did change my life forever.
And you also talk of how you shifted from physics to computer
Yeah,
science.
so I shifted from physics to computers. And what fascinated me about computers was, the ability to solve problems, ability to play with it, and the ability to, you get instant results and things like that, right? So it fascinated me. Didn't have too much idea about, that it's going to revolutionize the world, etc. But I was at the right place at the right time, right?
Yeah.
So.
And one of your first projects was actually brain scanning.
Well, that is again, because of the fascination with computers, I don't know whether it was called biotech or bioengineering or I don't know what. There was a lab here which was in the bio side, and somebody was doing a project on capturing brain signals and wanted the signals to be plotted on a graph using a PDP-8 computer. These are all old systems. So, if I said, if I volunteer myself to have my brain signal scanned, will you allow me to write the program to print this graph? So he said yes. And so I volunteered.
Wonderful. And his fascination with the brain continues. As we mentioned just a minute ago, he is very deeply invested in understanding the brain as a computing engine. To this date, it's obviously an unsolved problem. One of the sort of enablers that came along is this whole computer science education system, which with IIT Kanpur, IISc, TIFR, IIT Madras, and IIT Bombay, every institution had their role to play. And more importantly, the textbooks that came out, the very cheap. You talk of the $5 programming language book that Professor Rajaraman and others championed. when I sit back and think, I can only imagine what that could have done in those days. You were an insider.
Yeah, so
5 rupees, I'm sorry, not $5.
Yeah, 5 rupees. So, again, Professor Rajaraman especially wanted to make the knowledge accessible to the common man. And so he wrote a series of books on programming languages, computer science, etc., and made it available almost at no cost.
Yeah.
That one of the reasons why, of course, it became very popular and a lot of people got interested. See, early on, you have to educate people, especially in a new field. Yeah. You have to educate people on the benefit, etc. And in fact, that's what I tell people. See, you need to understand the history, where you came from, and then you need to look at the future and educate people on why that future is important. Right? And in the computer science field, people had the foresight to think that this is going to be a field that will have high impact. And we must be there at ground zero. And fortunately, we were there. We didn't pursue, of course, on the hardware side, but we were there. And there are several examples, right? Indian companies ported Unix on a PC, personal computer, way back in 1983. We had India, by necessity, had to create a multi-user system. We couldn't buy the big multi-user systems at that point, which used to cost us multiple lakhs of rupees. So they would buy a cheap PC and port a Unix operating system onto that and use this as a multi-user system. So our early implementation of multi-user systems were all on PC.
Wow.
HCL, Wipro are the companies which pioneered these things, and they got global recognition. Intel gave Wipro an award.
Yeah.
Right, an award recognizing their efforts to port Unix onto the Wipro PC. So, a lot of pioneering efforts in that sense.
Yeah, and just to sort of reiterate the point, imagine an India where there were very few computer science courses, but learning materials were available for 5 rupees. You could learn programming, you could learn Fortran, you could learn Unix operating system for 5 rupees. And that sort of piqued people's interest to the point where we see what we are today. Let's fast forward.
And also the Computer Society of India, so today you have NASCOM, etc. In those days it was Computer Society of India, ran several programs which were actually almost free in teaching computer science. A lot of the teaching happened not at academic institutions, but in industry forums and by industry.
And you were talking, so let's fast forward a little bit to the IT age. I want to spend a little bit of time on another IIT Madras alumnus company, Softtech. You write about Divakar Nigam's company and how the products he had created competed with the Lotus 123, which was the best Excel, which was the best spreadsheet, and also the word processors. This would, to create software products that early on in the mid 80s was something that we were not really known for.
Yeah, see, and I keep talking about it again and again and again. Our talent is second to none. Okay, we can create anything as good as anybody else in the world. So they did create it. But what we lacked is there was no venture funding available. So you couldn't have scaled up and, because the market was primarily outside the country.
Yeah.
In India, people could not afford those pieces of software. In the 80s, etc., how software was sold was you bought the hardware, the vendor came and installed it, and the software came free. You expected the hardware cost to include the software cost also. That was India in the 80s actually. And hence these companies, and you didn't have the money to go out and market. See, before 1991, foreign exchange was controlled. When you want to go outside India, you would get $20 as the money to travel. and you have to come back and give account for that $20, how you spend it, to the Reserve Bank of India.
So those were the days when Infosys started something called a global delivery model. So before we get to the global delivery model, let's talk a little bit about the origin of the IT services industry. How TCS and subsequently Wipro, and you talk of Mastech and then Infosys, sort of started taking shape. And maybe you should start talking about
Yeah.
the people involved.
So, FC Kohli, working with Tatas actually saw that Tatas were starting to use a lot of the computers for their business needs, etc., and decided to start a division which focuses only on the use of computing for business purposes. And that's the genesis of TCS. And he is the, really the father of the computer industry, because he was the first one who, saw that this is a opportunity to, but of course he was focused only on the needs of Tata.
Yeah, and India maybe to some extent.
Yeah, but then I think in one of the trips outside India, he saw the opportunity to provide this as a service outside India. But the way they did was to send people abroad to work on the system and then come back. And most of the time, that was the model that was being used. But Infosys, when we started, we said, can we leverage talent in India, sitting in India, and develop software for companies abroad? And we called it the global delivery model.
And mind you all, this was 1984-85, when internet was probably non-existent.
So we started way back in 1981. Our first customer was in US, and first customer was a product company. They were selling an ERP for apparel manufacturers. It's an ERP system for apparel manufacturers running on a computer called Data General Computer. And we got the contract to port that to, so it was at that time running on BASIC. So we got the contract to port it to COBOL. Now this is perfect for developing in India because it's a product, so no interface with the customer. It's a porting, BASIC to COBOL, and we can do it sitting here in India. So that's how Infosys started, and we would actually write the code, test it, and ship the code using courier service. And we would send 2 copies, one with one day, another one second day, because if one was lost, the other one will reach there. It will take 14 days to reach there.
I'm sure a lot of students will understand that slightly more technical aspect. You needed to simulate the client's computer here in Bangalore.
Yeah. So BASIC to COBOL, we had to simulate a lot of things, etc.
And so that simulation also involved some innovation to simulate the client's operating system on a cheap PC.
Yeah. So we didn't have the COBOL computer. It was too expensive for us to buy.
Yeah.
So we bought a PC and ran COBOL on that. There was a company that had ported it, so we would run it on a PC actually. So all the development was done on a PC, not on a Data General Computer. So later on, they ported it to AS400, IBM mainframe. A lot of that work was done using cheap PCs.
Wonderful. So let's now switch and talk a little bit about about the Infosys story itself. How did you meet Mr. Narayan Murthy, and how did the team come together? So
after I left IIT Madras and I passed out, graduated in 1979, I joined Padni Computers. I had offer from a couple of Tata companies, and then I got an offer from Padni. What fascinated about Padni was the CEO had come himself for the recruitment. And he said that we are a small company, but we want to grow big, etc. So I decided to take on the PCS offer, Patni Computers offer. And the head of software at that point at PCS was Narayan Murthy. So I had not met him. When I joined only, I met him. We were all working for PCS. So over the years, I was employee number 10 or something like that at that point when I joined. So it's a small company. But over the years, he had recruited all the other founders. And we met there. So this was 79. 81, actually mid-80s, Murthy decided to actually start his second venture. His first venture actually didn't succeed, it failed. Again, because it was focused on the Indian market. So this time he said, I'm going to start a business, but I'll focus on the global clients, not Indian clients. And that's the genesis of Infosys, and that's where we all met. All the founders of Infosys met at Patni Computers. All of us were working for Murthy at that time. He was the head of software there.
And the company, any IT services company is only as good as their employees. So I remember when Infosys came to hire from IIT Madras in 1992 when I graduated, and there was a written exam and there was a process to hire the best people. And Infosys offer, even at that time, was almost twice what L&T had offered some of us. So tell us the idea of what was your thought process in hiring students from across the country? Because ultimately the company got built by all these very bright people coming in.
Infosys believed in hiring at the lowest rank and then promoting internally. Because then we knew that the people would have been completely imbibed into the culture of the organization, would understand the organization, would represent the organization properly, etc. So we wanted to recruit at the entry level, and primarily from institutions like IIT. But then we had to find out some of the best people whom we believed will fit into a company like Infosys. We knew that anybody working in the IT industry, and now probably anybody working in any industry, would have to continuously learn. New languages, new operating systems, new problem statements. Every environment is going to be different. So learnability becomes extremely important. Second, problem solving. All engineers, I believe, are problem solvers, because engineering is all about problem solving, right? So on the problem solving, we were sure if we recruit from IIT, they would have been trained on problem solving skills, but we wanted to test their learnability skills. Learnability is having some basic knowledge and apply that to new and hitherto unseen problems, right? You have some knowledge, you apply it to a new situation. That's what learnability is all about. So our test was to look at learnability skills of the people. Can you take something that you learned and apply to new areas and things like that?
I still remember Infosys would conduct a written test in what is today Raman Hall. It was called the Physics Lecture Theatre at that time. And the entire lecture theatre would have students sitting, and Mr. Murthy would be proctoring the exam. So he would come personally to recruit people from IIT Madras at that time. This was 1992. So as the industry grew, you had TCS, Wipro, and all of these companies started developing this model of serving offshore clients. But there was also a fairly large and thriving Indian market in some way. But it was not, a lot of companies made their revenues and profits from serving clients, and that's where the global brands got built. So let us talk a little bit about where this industry is headed. I want to take another 5 minutes, and then we'll open the floor up to everybody for questions. IT industry from India is the gold standard today for anybody in the world. You can go anywhere in the world, chances are an Indian software engineer has already been there. It's that interpenetrated. This idea of offshore development is probably reaching its expiry date. What do you see as where this industry, this large industry, where is this headed?
So, so I don't agree with that statement that it's reaching its expiry date. In fact, it's the other way. It has become the default mode for anybody doing any work with computer, any knowledge work with computer.
Okay.
So if you look at any multinational corporation, they have what they call a Global Capability Center, GCC, in India. And India is their second or third largest base of knowledge worker or researchers or IT department, etc. So it has actually become the only way the world does software today.
Wow.
The reason I say this is, the industry is today not just Indian companies. Accenture, and I'll just use the names just for example, probably has the largest number of employees in India than outside India, their home country also. IBM has the largest number of employees in India than anywhere else in the world.
Wow.
Samsung has the second largest number of employees here in India. So, and what happens over time is the retained knowledge in India becomes more than the retained knowledge outside India.
Correct.
So this is the only place where that knowledge is today. And slowly it goes to new products, and over time we will own the complete product, complete development, etc. And that is why I'm confident in saying that this is not going to go away. It will go away if AI comes and replaces knowledge work. If AI learns to code and things like that, possible. But otherwise, if people are going to do this work, India will do this work forever.
Very nice.
Because we have got that stickiness now.
Talk of place, you said the word place 2-3 times, and the moment I say global capability center, what city in India comes to your mind? Okay, it was not that way. You were all, when you were working with Patni, you were based in Mumbai, and you chose Bangalore, and you were one of the first people to choose Bangalore and make Bangalore what it is today. You'd also talk of other companies that came along, but talk a little bit about why Bangalore and how did you choose a no-name city like Bangalore at that time?
So in our case, it was very simple. We wanted to buy, again, a directional computer. We want to get a steady stream of revenue to support our operations. We were doing work for, the company in the US on directional computer, but we couldn't afford to buy a computer. We were doing the development on PC and things like that. So we wanted to buy a directional computer, and we required about 27 lakh rupees. And no bank would lend us money. This is why we say against all odds. No venture capital, no bank would give us any loan. Karnataka government lent us 27 lakh rupees at that point.
Wow.
KSIDC.
And who was the chief minister at that time?
I don't remember. It was not chief minister. It was all done by professionally. No chief minister, nothing. And we were nobody, right? We had probably 25 employees or 30 employees at that point. So we were nobody. And hence, and we got our first Indian customer in Myco. Today it's Bosch. And they would use the computer during daytime, and that would give us steady revenue. And we would use the computer during nighttime. Right? Because they couldn't buy a computer at that point, because India had import restrictions. We got the license so you require a license to buy a computer or import a computer. We got the license because of our export earnings and things like that. So, but they couldn't buy a computer, so we bought the computer, let them use it, they would pay us, and we would use it in the night time. And that's the reason. So, first customer, and we wanted to show our appreciation for the government giving us the loan. So we said we'll shift our registered office to Bangalore. So that's why we moved to Bangalore. And two of the largest firms, Wipro and Infosys, are based, headquartered in Bangalore, and that Bangalore became kind of the...
And then TI came along and set up. After that, I think many
No, we also started building brand Bangalore. Anywhere we would go, people would ask, why should we develop software in India? Who are you? Where are you from? So we had to tell, Bangalore is here in the middle of India, show a map of India, etc. And we also build campuses that are better than our clients. Because when they come, they need to understand that this is a world-class company, it's not a fly-by-night operator and all that stuff. So a lot of thinking had gone into branding Bangalore, branding, the industry and things like that. And all other companies, that's why, I felt that this is a industry building activity.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Industry building activity. And so that's why this industry is so big. If it was just one company, nobody would have recognized it. But it transformed how software is produced in the world. Completely transformed how software is produced in the world. And anybody you go anywhere, any multinational you go anywhere, talk to them about software, they'll say India. Right? And that's why we...
And they will say Bangalore.
They say Bangalore.
So imagine
Bangalore
27 lakhs.
Branded very well.
27 lakhs from the government, one client who had a computer that would have dual use, and two companies, Infosys, Wipro, and then a slow stream of other companies. That's it. That's what took Bangalore from being a sleepy little city to being what it is today.
I know Bangalore had a legacy of hosting research institutions,
Sure.
HAL,
NAL, IIC.
Yeah, defense establishments were there. So
Sure.
it had some scientific, HMT, scientific underpinnings.
Sure. So let's conclude. I mean, I think we're almost at the time when I should open up, but I have one last question to ask you. In the part of branding Bangalore, this Bangalore IT Festival, which is today something that everybody looks up to, you had a hand in shaping the Bangalore IT Festival. Please talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so see, we need a platform. So NASSCOM is a platform, right, where industry can come together, discuss issues, and solve industry problems and things like that. We wanted a platform where we can publicly meet, which became the Bangalore IT .com, IT.biz, and today it's called Bangalore Tech Summit. Because over time, we also realized that, there is a lot of multidisciplinarity in what we do. And biotech is another hot area. So we combined IT and biotech, and that's why it's called Bangalore Tech Summit now. And you have to evolve with times, right?
Yeah.
You have to constantly reinvent yourself. So the summit also has reinvented itself every single year. And that's why it's not lost its relevance, it's not lost its stature and things like that.
I hope you all got a flavor of what it took to build an industry in India, starting with importing the first computer into Calcutta at ISI, to where today is India, where India is the software destination for any large company, large or small. So we'll open the floor up to questions. There's a couple of people with mics. This gentleman is the early bird.
Good evening, sir. I'm Mage. I am a student at the Department of Biotechnology. And I would like to take a slight tangent. So you have many ventures in biotechnology, and you just spoke about the scope of biotech. What do you think are the odds for biotech in India currently, and where will the industry go forward?
It's only limited by our capacity to dream, our capacity to our ambition, etc. There is no reason why we cannot be at the forefront of any of these things. And if you have any doubts, just visit the Brain Center. You will know that we can be at the forefront. See, what you need to look at is, need to look at disruptions. You need to look at changes that are happening. And if you are at that change, you can lead it. Today, money can buy any equipment you want. Talent is given, right? You are all in IIT because you are talented. Then it's just your ambition, your dream. what you want to achieve. And
then-
biotech is a very, very hot area right now, because I feel that in the next 10 years, for example, cure for cancer will be there. Already there are cures for some cancer, etc. We are understanding the human body much better today. So,
Thank you, sir.
I'll just, while the next question comes up, I'll say at the peak of COVID, India was one of the few countries that could make sufficient paracetamol to service the entire country.
yeah.
And during the vaccination process, India was one of the few countries that could make vaccines for all of its citizens. So it's all thanks to biotech.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity to interact with you. I'm Shivansh from the second year of electrical department BTech. And my question is regarding your journey from the starting of Infosys. Like, you were one of the founding members of Infosys, and the company has grown up to a big start as one of the biggest companies all over. How would you explain your journey to be? What are your learnings from your journey?
See, there will be ups and downs, okay? The problems would be different. Like I said, no, for example, there was no venture capital. There were a lot of government restrictions. India was not known. So today's problems would be very different. If you are a startup, you have to anticipate that you will run into problems, and you must have the stamina, the wherewithal to overcome. And it will only happen if you have the will to overcome those. You are a lateral thinker, because you have to find a solution somehow or other, right? Sometimes you will have to pivot, do something very different. Today, you have venture capital available. If you have a good idea, you will get funded. India is no longer seen. India now is seen actually the third best location for startups, right? You can develop solutions for the world sitting in India. People accept that. So you are at a much better place, and internet has made all the knowledge available to you. All the tools are available. Everything is there. And when I talk to founders today, what I find very different is they have absolutely no fear. They believe they are the best and they can conquer the world. I also believe so. Right? So, but problems will be there. Otherwise every startup will be successful, right? But problems will be there, and you must have a lot of good luck also. Good luck means you must do your part. If you don't do your part and expect somebody else to help you, no. You must do your part, and then luck will favor you.
Thank you, sir.
See, I am 72, and I have lived through this entire journey which Kris is talking about. Also because I had a company which used to do the events for NASCOM summits with Devang Mehta. So you mentioned about Bangalore. What happened in Bangalore? There was another incident of the very first private company in India to buy a computer was Asian Paints. An order for ICL system was placed by LIC for Calcutta. So the computer system arrived, whole of Calcutta was stalled by strike and protests, and people were lying down on Chaurangi Road, preventing the truck from bringing the computer parts. It became a huge issue. They thought this device is going to make everybody unemployed. And LIC didn't know what to do after having paid the custom duty and the price for the computer. So after about a year, they auctioned it. Mr. C.H. Chokshi, a dhoti-clad, Topi Gandhian man, founder of Asian Paints, he bought that system. And Asian Paints became the first private company to buy a computer and build entire systems around it.
In the book we talk about the computerization in the banks in India. They had the unions opposing it actually. So they didn't say it's computer, they said automatic ledger posting machines, ALPM. And that's how computerization happened in banks. Of course, you have seen banks grew manifold. So computers never create job losses. Whether you stay relevant or not is the question that you need to ask. Computers never actually create job losses.
First of all, I would like to thank you for this amazing session. I'm Ashish. I'm pursuing an interdisciplinary dual degree in cyber physical systems. Like a question related to the previous question again. You briefly talked about that coding from AI, right? So like in the today's world where we have tools like ChatGPT coming out and like Google is also bringing out its own AI engine, how do you think like the Indian IT industry can pivot to like support itself?
So just like I said, individuals have to be relevant, companies will have to be relevant, otherwise they will not survive, right? But what I'm positive about the Indian IT industry is, remember that when we started in the 70s, mainframes were ruling the world, and Fortran and COBOL were the languages. Today, it's mobile computing, it's IoT, cloud, languages are, Python and things like that, right? Very different. But the industry and networking was not there. Internet came much later. The programming model changed. Now, of course, AI, ML. But the industry has been able to keep up with all these changes and has transitioned and grew. Every single year, the industry grew. The Indian IT services industry grew every single year. There have been no large layoffs in the industry. Today, industry employs 5 million people. When you hear about some people losing jobs, it's less than 1%. So, you're answering your question. Yes, new technology will come, the model will change, but new models are emerging. Right now, the paradigm is about inferences from data, right? Actionable insights from data. Then directly connecting that data to, let's say, IoT devices and things like that. So the number of applications are increasing. You have new tools to make those create those applications, which may be things like ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is actually announcing APIs for people wanting to use it, right? So you have to look at these as new tools, new programming paradigms and things like that, and you have to stay relevant. You have to look at how you can use those tools to provide more services to your customers. Because XYZ company, right, a multinational corporation, would want to use ChatGPT. Now, they don't have the knowledge. They don't have knowledge of their applications. That knowledge resides with an Indian company or their sender here. So they would use the same set of people. Now, of course, you need to know how to use ChatGPT. So that's the connection.
I am Santanam from 1971 batch, when we did not even see a calculator. We had a mechanical device, and we used to have Aristo slide rule and log tables to calculation. Anyway, I am not fully conversant with computer, but recently I heard a news that IIT has developed a system for smartphone software, Barrows. Do you think it will make an inroad to manufacturing smartphones in India with Barrows systems and capture the Indian market and in future global market?
I really do not know at this point whether it will capture the Indian market or not, but it's a good development. See, developing something, okay, is 15%. Only 15%. 85% is making money out of that. Sales, marketing, establishing a distribution network or a sales and marketing arm, etc. And that will take a lot of effort. A faster way it can happen is government saying all phones in India must use this operating system. One shot government can make it happen. I don't know whether they will do it. It will create huge furor. But I don't know whether we want to go there or not. It's good that we develop, so we have the technology, we need to know. What we need to look at is what is the transition that is going to happen in smartphones. and be ahead. So in order to be ahead, we need to know how we came here. So that is why I'm very impressed with that. Because let's say the next transition in phone is, let's say, voice activated, or user interface becomes voice, which does automatic translation and things like that. Now we can use our own operating system and build the UI on top of it. So people don't even see the operating system, people see the user interface, which is very different, which is voice activated. There may be no computer with ambient computer, because every device will have a computer built in and you can interact with it, and it will bring your personal profile from the cloud. So there won't be any smartphone. So in those transitions, having that knowledge to build the operating system and build device, applications on top of that will become very important. Because if you miss that, you are dependent on somebody else's operating system to build on top of that. So that's why it's very important.
So talk of languages, incidentally, Kris's colleague, Mr. Nandan Nilekani, has invested in the Center of Excellence at IIT Madras to create Indian language technologies,
Yes.
to create
natural language interface for Indian languages. It's a center here in IIT Madras.
Run by Professor Mitesh Kapra.
Hello. Hello, sir. My name is Tulsi. I'm from Department of Management Studies. I just wanted to know, in the era when Infosys came, at the same time, the other players in IT sector like TCS or Wipro or Tech Mahindra, they also came. So was there a sense of competition in those early days, or how did you deal with the competition, to be the best among them or something?
See, there was competition, clearly. We are fierce competitors. And there is cooperation also, because we felt that there is a larger purpose. There is an industry building activity that needs to do. All of us came together to establish India. Right? That helped everybody to build brand India, to build that world-class software can be developed here. And I'm very proud, maybe it's because all of us were first generation, that we all worked together, we were close friends, even today we are friends. It just happened, right? We worked together in building that industry, and that's, so when we wanted to record everybody's this thing, we got 100% cooperation. FC Kohli spent 4 hours recording 1 hour of interview. So did Ramadurai. So did Asim Premji. So did, of course, Narayan Murthy, Nandan, etc. All of them spent time recording these. And they're not easy to get access to or record, and I got 100% cooperation. Of course, I got, Professor Muthukrishnan, Professor Mahabala, Professor Rajana, all of those people cooperating with me.
Ramki Ramakrishnan. Good part of the story I've seen from the other side of the picture, the Ministry of Electronics and IT, from the before NASCOM.
Yeah, of course.
Where I joined in '76, so you can imagine that.
We had interacted together about Infosys had a foray into hardware, the telex, electronic telex machines, etc.
Yeah. So one small angle I wanted to bring in this is this 80s story of software industry. Moved on with so much of struggle for all of you who started FC Kohli first in a little earlier, then you started, and then many of the others. Importing computers was a problem, this problem, that problem. Usual license quota Raj, you are going through that. And then 1991 came, that's the time NASCOM was born, and the government identified software as a topic of great opportunity. Then they were discussed with you, sir, how much you can import. We can export in a year, $400 billion you promised, $400 million you promised. And then based on that, tax, ABCD, concessions are given, and you indeed made that. And then life was never the same. So this journey post-90, when Zoom, of course you were there the previous 10 years in a slightly difficult life, but after that the boom came, not only you, as you rightly said, or a set of growing number of players. maybe another 25 years honeymoon was there. What I mean is 90s, 2000s, 2015. I'm giving for some reason, contextually. But in this whole period, it was only export. All you need to ask is anybody working within India, they are not doing it, only export. So only export, they are able to compare to any other industry. Why are they doing so well? Simply because they are doing export. Because within India, they cannot handle the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy will not let them do anything. That is the story. But now came the 2000s, slowly e-governance and one by one, and now the startup. So suddenly, you find the 360-degree view, IT, so to say, you can call it as a mastery or a domination, what you mentioned in a global sense also, has happened, which is very fulfilling because the internet came, internet also grew, mobile thing grew, mobile grew, applications grew, everything. So this is a very sort of very redeeming situation that has happened from those early days. Second one point, all of you, Infosys founders particularly, including especially you, all of you went beyond of your Infosys innings and software export innings and did from philanthropy to case Excellent Ventures, ABCD, like that. All of you did and enriched the society in so many ways. So it's a remarkable thing.
Not only them, they were one of the first companies to create ESOPs. So
Yeah.
a lot of the early employees also did well.
See, the IT services industry is the first truly global industry out of India. What is the definition of a truly global industry? The revenue of that company must reflect the GDP distribution in the world. So we are exactly not the GDP distribution of the world because we can only tap into the English-speaking countries, right? But India is about 3 to 4% of the global GDP. And the revenue of IT services company from India is somewhere between 5 to 10%. So it is the truly global industry. It reflects the global GDP in some sense. But what I am very proud of is that wave of entrepreneurship is continuing. So the first wave is Infosys, Wipro, TCS, etc. The second wave is Mindtree, Cognizant, companies like that. The third wave is Happiest Minds, but the third wave also is application of IT to other industries, which is all the startups that you're seeing, e-commerce and things like that, is application of IT to digitize other industries, which is what you're seeing today. And all of this is because of the IT capability that exists in India today. Right? That's very, very important. One more point I want to make here is that the way India is approaching technology, digital technology, is very different from how other countries are looking at it. We want to make sure that IT benefits the common man. So UPI is a good example, right? Using technology, we were able to create a platform for payments, which is frictionless. You know somebody's telephone number, you don't need to do anything, you can send money to them. And it's instantaneous, real time, and no charge to you, and no charge to the recipient. Even credit card, if you use, there's a 5% the merchant has to give. Whereas, of course, it's subsidized by the government, but on the UPI, there is no charge. So what India has done is actually democratized the use of technology, use of IT technology, and built that infrastructure today, which allows other applications to be developed on that. And it all came from, again, the contribution that IT industry has made, actually. So thank you for raising that.
I'm Achyutan, I'm an electrical engineer by profession. The thing is, I would like to know your comments about the influence of IT on hardware jobs and innovative thinking of engineers. Many IT companies, partly from they attract, because they pay more, then the quality of standard of quality is come down drastically. So I do not know your opinion. I would like to hear your opinion. Because according to me, they have killed the hardware industry. IT companies killed the hardware innovative spirit of engineers.
No, I don't agree. I see the best of designers, hardware designers, actually are Indian. And they're doing the design sitting here in India. So the designers are there. It's just that we don't have the ability to invest. Because hardware requires significant capital investment. Now we are seeing that capital investment starting to happen. You will see pretty soon semiconductors being made in India. Already phones are being manufactured in India. Of course, we don't own that IP, but you will see IP being owned, because this requires significant foresight. Many of the patents are owned by foreigners. So if you want to develop something in hardware today, you need to pay all those people royalty.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people royalty today. So we are behind. That's why I'm saying, if you want to leapfrog today, choose an area which is cutting edge, where you are not behind, where there are not many patents. And there are many areas that way. So for example, transition to electric, right? Battery technology. Of course, patents probably are captured by other people now. But we have to find these areas where we can capture the patents, we can build the industry. See, in software, fortunately, there is no patenting possible. It's copyright. So as long as you don't copy somebody's code, you are free. Hardware is not that. You have to pay everybody royalty. That's a key difference.
Okay, we'll have time for one more question and then we'll have to pause.
My name is Chandravadanam. I am alumni of chemistry department. Sir, you have told that you have started with 25 founders. And when you were starting, you must have encountered, even for small steps, many obstacles that took long time to solve. Each step took long time, must have taken. And among you people, a large number of 25 people, how did you sustain that spirit of that big dream? How you come across that arts not dissolve those people, and how could you achieve keeping those people together, sustain the spirit of...
So we had to become creative. You know, Mahesh talked about the ESOP program. So in the 90s, how do we come? So 1993, 91 government opened up the economy. 1993, IBM came to India, Microsoft came to India, Oracle came to India. Everybody, all the computer companies came to India. And then we were afraid whether we will be able to recruit the best people. So we came up with this employee stock option plan and gave every employee options in the company. So we had to come out with creative ways in which we can recruit and retain people. And of course, today Infosys is well known and all that stuff. In those days, it was not well known. So we had to come up with creative ways in which to recruit, keeping our costs lower, but making sure that the employees also benefited.
Wonderful. So I think...
Thank you. Thank you.
We have one little picture for all of us to see. And there will be some door prizes for those that will identify Kris in this picture. This is a group of founders of Infosys. You can probably identify Mr. Narayan Murthy. Can anybody identify Kris? Bottom right. So I have a question, follow-up. This book is very gripping. It's written, I mean, you can really see the against all odds part, and I can see a movie being made on this. So I want to know, who would you like to see playing Kris?
I have no idea. I have never thought about that.
You see that man there? So
Maybe some young star today, I don't know. Hopefully somebody who's intellectual.
Very good. Wonderful. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this conversation. This is a must read. You must get your hands on a book.
Thank you all very much. Really enjoyed this interaction. And as I said, it's always a pleasure to come to IIT Madras and interact with all of you. I would really like to see lot of deep tech startups coming out of IIT. You have an important role to play in this. Any idea you see in the lab, etc., think about how can I create a company around that. And then become an entrepreneur and do it. So hoping that stories about you will be written in the future. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Kris, for that very riveting conversation. You have been the torchbearer, you have been the mentor guru, the person who shows the path for all the followers, all of us around here. Extremely kind of you to have spared your time and, for accepting our invitation to be our guest here today and for the wonderful conversation. And thank you, Professor Mahesh, for leading a very interesting discussion. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present you with a small memento. So I request Professor Mahesh to hand over the memento to Kris Gopalakrishnan.